All right,
All right, cool. We're back on.
we're back on.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, and like we can finish up where we were. I mean, I know that I was kind of like in the middle of talking about just basically getting clean, which was great.
Yeah.
And I I mean, I guess like the long story short, there really was there was like a point of no return. But it's almost kind of cool. Like we were talking a little bit about our testimonies last night, and you know, that summer after I graduated high school was when I was saved. I attribute it to July 15th, and I'm pretty sure I'm right on that date because that would have been a Saturday night, which because I was at church at my brother's church, and they had church on Saturday nights. And
When you say your brother's church, the church that he attended, or he was a pastor? Yeah.
he attended, but he was like he still is to this day. Like he's a central figure. I don't know if he's like even has a formal title like an elder or anything, but his between him and his pastor and other people at the church, I mean, they were instrumental in leading me to the Lord. And I remember the night exactly when I was saved, and I was hanging out with my girlfriend. I mean, she's my ex-wife now, but she was my girlfriend at the time, and just standing in that parking lot talking through, like we had gone to church there a few times. Like we went, and it was kind of weird. Like like we both had known church, but like this was the first time we went to a little tiny charismatic church that like they were jumping over each other in love with the Lord, and like they were cool. Like they were really really solid people. But it was almost like, do you ever hear the saying? If you catch on fire, people want to be around you just to watch you burn. So like these were the kind of people, they were so on fire that you just wanted to watch them burn. And they they were just ignited for Christ. And whenever whenever we started going there, it was kind of interesting. It was kind of a getaway for us too. So like it was me and my girlfriend, and there was a place for us to get away too.
Instead of going to the bar.
Yeah, instead of going to a bar, and like it was a time for us, we were able to be alone, and but the caveat was we had to go to church.
Yeah.
And so after going there intermittently for, I don't know, over the course of probably several weeks, that hot July night, I don't know, it was probably like 8 or 9 at night. I can remember the gravel road. I can remember the pickup truck sitting next to me. Like I can still picture it. And we were sitting there just talking about what we'd been listening to over the last several weeks, and just kind of looking at her and saying, and I don't even know who asked the question first. I think she asked it first, like, what do you think of this? Or what are you feeling about this? And me looking at her and going like, I think this makes sense. Like, I think I'm a Christian. I think I'm a Christian now. And she's like, me too. And that was the moment. And like, I'm going to stick to it. And I don't know, like I'm overthinking it because it's like, I should just say July 15th and that's it. But it could have been July 8th or it could have been July 22nd. But I'm splitting the odds, and I'm pretty sure it was July 15th in 1995 that I came to a saving knowledge of Jesus
And you were
in
how
that
old?
parking lot. I was 18.
18. Okay.
Yeah, I was 18 going on 19. And so at that point in time, by the time I was saved, there was just no looking back at that point. And don't get me wrong, like obviously I went through some trials. I mean, I went through a divorce, and like I had to worry about money and stuff at times, but it was never bad. Like it was always like God always found a way to
You
help
never
me pick myself.
backslid?
Like with my faith.
Yeah.
No. I so like I never got to the point. So I'll even say this. Before I was saved, very little that I knew about Christianity or religion, believing God, not believing God. It was always like when I entertained the ideas of reality with the information that I had, I always landed on like, yeah, of course there's a God. Like, of course there's a God. So now it's like, well, what does that mean? Like, what are the implications? So then whenever I was saved, it was a lifetime of just kind of like, all right, let me toy with these ideas, but like, come on, there's got to be a God. There's something bigger than us that made us. So then by the time I came to my saving knowledge, and really like the thing that was in my mind when God was transforming me was just like I like what the thing that I got was that Jesus was alive. Like the thing that captured me in my mind was realizing that this Jesus is really, if he is really who he says he is, and I came to the faith and the belief that he really was who he said he was, that meant he was resurrected. That means he's alive physically right now, even though I don't see him. Like he's physically alive, and he's intervening in our lives, and his Holy Spirit is active in this world. So like that went from being kind of like the mythological understanding that I had from my church upbringing, where it was kind of like, yeah, you know, like maybe it's just a convenient thing to believe. Like, of course we're going to believe in God and pray and stuff, but like we really don't know what to do with it. It shifted from that
to like a real everyday.
To like, this is real.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even know what it all looks like,
Yeah.
but this is real.
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden it's like there was just a major seismic shift in my life, which I think every believer has to go through that in some way. It doesn't all look the same, but that seismic shift has to happen for a person that goes from being a sinner lost in sin to an individual saved by grace.
But I guess asking if you backslid is after the fact that was real in your mind.
Yeah.
Even though you knew that was real.
So
Did you ever default to worldly ways, worldly habits?
I still do.
Okay.
I mean, I still do. I mean, if I'm just being honest, like when it comes to like worldliness, like, you know, you ever listen to Paul Washer?
He's good.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I can only take him in doses because he's so
confrontation.
Yeah, and he's not even, like, he's loving, like he's compassionate. But
I don't mean confrontation.
I know what you're saying. I do
like,
know what you're saying.
You're confronted with these things. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. And you're right. Like you're right. So the reason I bring up Paul Washer is that one of the things I think he points out very effectively is that we are so, we're so, like enslaved to sin. We're so enslaved to sin that when we are looking at our own lives and where we are, like in relationship with our right living, comparing ourselves among ourselves, we have a tendency to forget how sinful sin is. And we have a tendency to kind of do like a relative comparison where it's like, I'm better than my neighbor, or I'm better than my relative. And then you kind of get this like, I'm a pretty okay guy. Where I think Paul Washer will bring it back to say, like, you need a reality check. Like you do not have an appreciation for how sinful sin is if you're sitting there thinking that you're really an okay guy. Like, so you are desperately in need of Christ all the time.
So then is there room and space for that word backslide?
Well, yeah, no, I think there is. Yeah, for sure. And like, I would never say, like, and you're right. I think someone who's like especially religious or like outwardly religious, they would probably look at large sections of my life, probably even including today, and be like, well, this guy's not on the right track because he's not living a religious life.
Yeah.
Like he's like okay being like an ordinary everyday guy.
Yeah.
That just lives his life. It's like
they're expecting a pious.
Yeah, they're expecting the piety, and it's like I don't offer that. Like, and I don't even want to pretend to give that piety. And maybe that's kind of on me. Like, maybe there should be a certain amount of piety to my life. It should stand out. I do believe that my Christianity stands out because it takes you 2 seconds. I don't care who you are. Like, if you're brave enough to ask me what I believe, I'm gonna be very.
You should be brave enough to withstand my response.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Like, if you're gonna ask, and I know, honestly, like, I'll have conversations with people that aren't Christians, and if anybody was like listening to this that has had this come from me, like I'm always interested in having the conversation. But now, and I think it's a maturity thing. It's like, well, if it's a coworker, if I'm at work, it's like, well, first off, I'm there to work, so like I'm there to solve the work problems, and if we have 5 or 10 minutes, or if we have a lunch break together and we want to talk about personal things, there's virtually, from my perspective, there's no limits. Like we can talk about anything as long as you're comfortable. So sometimes I'll do the sanity check with someone. It's like, hey, are you okay talking about this? And the majority of the time, people are like, yeah, I'm okay talking about it. Like let's work this out a little bit. And then if it just starts to get like deer in the headlights, or like there's like a discomfort, I mean, I'll back off. That's fine. It has to be a mutual exchange, and that's the way I live. But I haven't answered your question. So like, the closest I got to backsliding was probably some of the most profound epiphanies that I had as a Christian, because really the reason that I talk the way I do in men's groups, at youth group, wherever. The reason I engage the way I do is because of my own personal experience as a young Christian. And, I was around solid believers. Like, God blessed me with some really faithful Christians, like people that were Bible believing, submitted to the Word of God Christians. My mother-in-law, my brother, obviously. Great people, saints. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, they're saints. And what I found was that whenever I first started asking questions, I was a Christian. I was a committed Christian. Like, I had to put this caveat out there when I asked these questions. Like, hey, I'm not doubting my faith. I think there's some good questions, and like I just don't know what the answers are. Like, I don't know. And God blessed me in that regard too. I mean, I remember a coworker, and I don't know if I shared this with you, but the first big company, like my first like real big boy job, where I was, I worked this place for 10 years. I went through an apprenticeship. I was not hesitant to call myself a professional. Like I was doing something that meant something to me in this world, and it just happened to be that the company I worked with was an explicitly Christian company.
Wasn't?
Or was
an explicitly Christian company?
Yeah, so it was a manufacturing facility. It was basically a machine shop, a tool and die shop, that the owner actually spun off from the company that I worked at before I came to Florida. So like these
Excuse me, sorry.
No problem. Bless you.
Is your cat somewhere?
Oh, yeah. No, she's somewhere long gone, far away.
She's gone. I'm just kidding.
By the way,
if you love your cat a
no,
lot.
no. You know what? I don't even consider myself a cat person.
No. Yeah.
But she's all right. Like,
Yeah.
I'll keep her.
Yeah.
But she's good. She's a good person. Good cat.
Good cat.
So what were we talking about?
That it was an explicitly Christian company. The guy was from the previous.
Yeah, so like these companies all kind of work together. So, I mean, 20 years of my career was between these two companies. So the one company was an offshoot of the second company. And they were both like pretty equally sized. And then they're still like, and they're important companies. Like if you mention them in my hometown, people know them. It's like, oh yeah, those are good. They're both good places to work. And, but they're like rivals, and the rivalry had to do with like the philosophy of how to conduct business. So the offshoot from the company I came from before I came down here was overtly trying to change the culture of the prior company by starting their own company and their own culture, which was overtly a Christian culture. So you would have these monthly meetings with the founder and president of the company standing up to do like a State of the Union where, here's how our money worked this month. Did we make money? Did we lose money? Did we grow our business? Did our business shrink? And there's like 500 employees at the time. And every single one of those meetings would turn into almost like a mini sermon. And he made no apologies that he founded and ran the company on the basis that it was going to be for the glory of God.
This was
First company.
The first company,
Right.
the company where I cut my teeth, where I became an apprentice and a machinist, and I first started. That was that was the job that changed me. Like up until that point in time, and so like when I started there, I had already been saved for almost a year, like 9 months, 9, 10 months. I was a baby Christian, so it was like really a blessing to be around successful,
Yeah.
healthy believers that knew how to work, how to take care of their family, and give the glory to God. So, and don't get me wrong, like not like everybody at that company was a Christian,
Right. Yeah.
right? So there were people that you would get around that like you're still trying to feel out how to even talk about your Christianity.
It's like when you pull up at Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
You know, you don't expect that the girl taking your order is
Right.
has to be a Christian.
Right,
you know?
right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So like, and you would bump into this because you have all kinds of friends, and there are a bunch of like I would be surprised if even half the people at that company were Christians. It probably wasn't. So like, people not even knowing you're a Christian or not would like grumble, and it's like, oh, this is a bunch of BS. It's like this isn't church. This is work. You shouldn't be talking about God at work.
Yeah.
And I remember like that kind of stuff stuck with me. It's like, well, should you or shouldn't you be talking about God at work? And it's like, I mean, I guess where I land, it's like, well, wherever I'm working, I'm being paid to execute on the vision of that company and to be productive. So, and kind of what's one of the cool things nowadays is that this is stemming from the way the culture shifted, and I'm sure we'll get into these topics later in other videos.
But to bring you back, the reason you were saying that is because as a young Christian, you were asking the questions, and regarding
Yeah.
you didn't answer my question about the backsliding. So
Right.
We're going to use that as an example to.
Oh yeah. Thanks for getting me back on track. I appreciate that. Yeah. So I think what it came down to was I was really taken back by how good the answers are out there. Like, I'm around healthy, rooted Christians, and I am shocked at how often the response to my questions were like, just have faith, or
Just trust.
just trust them. Like, just trust them. And I guess it's like, well, did they just not know themselves? Probably. Like, they didn't understand that this was a legitimate question, or like, those questions were just going to seed doubts, which I guess they could have. And it's like, you just don't want to go there.
But you're wired differently. So it may be that they didn't know, right?
Right.
But they also didn't care to know because they didn't need anything beyond that.
And that's fair. And to be honest, they would say as much. Like, these people that I love, like like a lot of the Christians that I was around, they would say exactly what you just said. And I'll be honest, yeah, that wasn't good enough. That wasn't good enough for me. And I mean, in some ways, I'm really thankful that was the case. But like, once, and maybe this is like for a later topic, but like, this is like the kind of thing that I would like to talk about.
No, we're going to talk about it right
All
now.
right, we can. I think that I don't think anybody would doubt the claim that the church, properly as we know it, is dysfunctional. At this point in history, like, the Christian body is disjointed, it's scattered, it's a lot of people in the Christian church are theologically illiterate. And and these are loving people. These are people that I would trust with anything, and they're hard workers, and like, they're really well put together. It's just that they don't know how to, or they aren't sure what the value is in parsing out what scriptures are saying and how they're put together and how it applies to your life and the world that you're observing. So it's kind of like you have this religious side. It's true, like, you're you're genuinely committed to God, but like there's almost like a haziness around it. Like we see through, the scripture verse, we see through glass darkly. So like we amplify that problem by making that glass more dark than it really is, by not seeking the questions and the ideas that are in scripture. And like I think some people would kind of recoil at the way I'm talking too, because it's like, well, that's all very, like, it takes us, like, almost goes back to what you were saying, like, a lot of people aren't wired that way. And it's like, well, it takes a special kind of person to pursue that. It's not for everybody. It's like, well, that may be the case, but when I read through the Bible, there's so much telling us to study and to know and to understand and to test it and to check the scriptures and to test people's truth sayings.
That they shouldn't be complacent to.
Yeah, they shouldn't be complacent. In addition to that, it's like, it's not that they're complacent. It's that they actually view this as drawing them away from the spiritual goodness that they have by just believing by faith, because now they're starting to think with their minds and like they're
allow
shifting
for doubt to come in,
right?
Yeah,
right. So they're like shifting away from like that pure spiritual experience that they have to like thinking about it, and it's like
it grounds them.
Yeah.
Like, oh,
yeah, and it's like, I know nothing. And I mean, I get that. Like, I'm empathetic to that reality. But yeah, I don't know. Like, how long do you want to go? I think what we should do, if you don't mind, I think we should shift the conversation back to talking a little bit more. I don't know, unless you have anything
Adam
else?
got uncomfortable.
No, I'm good.
Adam's hesitating.
I like this, and this is gonna stay in. This will stay in the video for sure.
Well, it could be different parts. It could be edited into 2 different videos.
No, we're gonna put this whole thing together.
Well, what I mean is we still put it out, but it's 2 different videos because the topics are more cohesive when you sleep.
Maybe
one topic in this video, the other topic in the other.
Okay, let's take a look at it.
Yeah, whatever.
I would honestly, at first, I would almost want to just splice them together and just let it be. Like, maybe we'll just cut off the very ends. Yeah. But I'm okay. Okay.
What did you want to shift to?
Oh, I wanted to shift to talking a little bit more about like our intention of like what we're doing with this podcast.
Before you jump in and say a bunch of stuff that.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't mind. Like, that wasn't an uncomfortable topic. I thought that was good. Okay. But those are the kinds of things that I think we want to expand on. So, like, when we're talking in the future, like, those are the kinds of things we should delve into as far as, like, what it means to be a Christian, or what it just means to be, like, a responsible dad, or anything like that. I mean, we can go different places, but and one of the things I wanted to mention, like, hopefully one of my big takeaways is I think it's going to be really valuable for us to watch this, like, just to watch it a couple times. And just like look at our own behavior in the video, like how we responded.
Sneezed like 5 times.
yeah. Like, George wouldn't get off of his phone. But really, like, at the end of the day, that's actually something I'm hoping we get comfortable with. Like, I'm hoping that we can be a little more active, where if we're delving into a topic that interests us, that we
pull it up.
Yeah, we pull it up. Like, look for an article or look for a source that we trust, and kind of be like, all right, let's ferret this out. Like, it's an open book test. And like, this time around, just to kind of recap, I mean, we obviously got kind of personal. Like, we just got to know each other a little bit better, which I think is really cool. And maybe other people will be interested in it, maybe not. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, right.
It's just us.
You could just not watch it, or fast forward, rewind.
Right.
Rewind.
Alan will probably watch like 15 minutes and be bored. Turn it off.
Yeah.
Which is okay. That's all right. But yeah, I think, and I like the setting. Like, I like the fact that we're in a pretty decent, quiet space. Like, one of the things I notice about videos, I've watched a lot of like group conversations where there's 2, 3, 4 people in a room, and if there's that one unlucky guy that has like a bad mic setup, and it's like you can hear his voice echoing, it's like it's distracting.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think audio is more important than visual.
Yeah.
Like, you know, even if the footage is grainy, but the audio is clear, it's
Yeah.
good enough.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, and I still want to think through like making sure the lighting's decent. So I've seen videos, you're right, that are good videos. I think of one. He recently kind of came to a minor YouTube fame. That teacher, Winston. I'm gonna have to get used to using this iPad. I'm so used to searching on my phone, but it's being used to make the video. His name is I can't remember.
He's a
his name.
YouTuber or like
He is now. He was a teacher, and like he does these videos. It'll come to me, but he came to fame because he challenged one of his students on whether J.K. Rowling, you know, J.K. Rowling is from Harry Potter. She has been canceled basically, right? Because she came out as being like transphobic. Are you familiar with that whole thing?
You're reminding me now.
Yeah. So this teacher challenged one of his students, and the video is just him, and the lighting is, you know, he didn't care about the lighting, and you know, like it's a dark, like he's almost like a silhouette of him. So it's not that dark. I mean, it's like it's okay, but then the video is really good. Like it's like a 5-minute clip where he's just kind of talking through, thinking critically about assumptions. So like the student comes to him and is like, you know, he's asking the teacher. He says, "What do you think of how J.K. Rowling's transphobic?" And instead of talking about how she's transphobic, he says, "Well, what tells you she's transphobic?" And he's like, "Well, I don't know." Well, he's like, "Well, look it up. Like, just tell me." Like, they weren't in a rush. So the student looks it up, and he's reading the tweets that allegedly like got her canceled, and he's looking at it, and he's like, "Well, yeah, these actually aren't that bad." You know, they weren't what I've been led to believe.
Yeah.
And it's kind of cool because you see the student kind of transform right there on the spot, where it's kind of like the light bulb goes on. It's like, oh, I've been sold a bill of goods.
Yeah. People love the hype. People love to just go off of what others commentate, and they never really go to the source themselves. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I mean, we're all guilty.
No, I'm not. Just kidding. But listen, Adam, I wouldn't want to leave anybody that might be listening on a cliffhanger. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And there were a few things that...
There's that guy, Warren Smith.
Okay, yeah, I don't know who was.
Yeah, if you ever get a chance, look this up. This is really interesting. It's not even 5 minutes long. But anyway, sorry. Go ahead. You had a thought.
No, I really want to bring you back to your thoughts, and I know you said maybe for another time.
Okay, it's a cliffhanger, huh?
It's a cliffhanger because I was interested. I'm pretty sure somebody's watching and listening and interested.
So where did I leave off?
So there was a few things we didn't finish talking, right? Discussing. The backsliding.
Okay.
You didn't finish your story of asking the questions that they didn't want to answer.
Okay, all right, and that's kind of, they're tied together.
Yeah, and they're tied together.
Yeah, so, I mean, you know, like, the season in my life that I think, and I will still put this down, like, I've never been, it's not like I don't have my doubts, like, I've routinely questioned my faith. I still do. I still question whether I have certain beliefs on sound footing or not. I think any mature Christian would do that their whole lives, right? I mean, I think that's reasonable. But like the thing that I kept going back to was like the rock. I mean, it's like Jesus keeps talking about himself being the rock and being an anchor point, being the cornerstone, and it's like, well, at every intersection where I have a doubt, what and maybe this is like an irresponsible question to ask, but I'd ask it anyway. It's like, what piece of information or evidence do I need to reject Jesus as the foundation of my life? Like, what is that piece of information? Like, you can have me doubt all kinds of things, peripheral beliefs, things about, like we can have debates about high church, low church, like how important is the Eucharist if you're a Roman Catholic, or is it just a symbol? And
right, but the fundamental,
just Jesus.
Nothing has taken you off that.
Right, it's just
But
Jesus.
is that backsliding? Is that what that word means?
Well, I think to me, backsliding is more like turning yourself away. Like people that backslide, and I guess backsliding can take a couple different forms, right? So like backsliding where you just like get back into worldly habits, even if you still believe strongly, is that backsliding?
That's what I've understood the word to be.
I guess that can. You're right. That can be a form of backsliding, and that kind of backsliding. I mean, I guess like. I think sometimes, and I don't know, like I don't want to be too self-deprecating, but like a lot of things that people would consider backsliding, it's like I almost haven't even forward slid from them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm just being honest.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. And then, like I said, I'm not trying to be self-deprecating. It's like it's not like my life isn't.
No, I know what you mean.
Apparently, it's not like my life isn't together. It is together.
Yeah.
But like when I just look at who I am as a person, it's like. Well, I don't have the piety to say like, hey, I got all this, all these things that I've conquered.
Yeah.
It's like, well, like almost by dumb luck, yeah, I've like conquered some stuff. I mean, by the grace of God, really, right? Yeah. And but back to like getting myself rooted, and I think I mentioned this last night. One of the first times that I bumped into an apologist. Like the concept of being an apologist. Should we explain that? Yeah. So I mean, and it's kind of funny. Like I thought the same thing when I first heard apologist. It's like, what a lame word. Like, what are you apologizing for? It's like, are you apologizing for being a Christian? It's like,
I'm sorry, I'm a Christian. But what I'm about to say is offensive to you.
That's right. And
I'm sorry for being a Christian, but I gotta tell you,
that's a good way to look at it. So, and then anybody can look that up. It's the root, the Greek word apologia. It's like giving a defense or, defending your faith. And, well, why do you need to defend your faith? Like, well, I mean, I think people have legitimate questions. I had them. Like, even as a Christian, even as a non-backslid, but marginally forward slid Christian, I had these questions just because they were interesting. At a minimum, they were interesting questions.
Right.
And it was almost just as interesting that there were Christians in my life that just didn't want to ask the questions.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, wait a second. I mean, and this came back to Jesus. So like, if Jesus is the rock, and we can take everything to him, we should be able to take even hard questions to him. And I did, and I was blessed by it. Like I took those hard questions to him, and he gave me answers. And I mean, like the answers in some ways were like so ordinary. It was like, hey, I was going. This is like I was in my mid-20s. So when did YouTube become a thing? Do you know? It's like 2002,
I think.
2002, maybe. That would make sense. So
yeah,
like
2002.
We'll have to look that up.
Look it up now. Because I remember I was in 10th grade when my graphic arts teacher was trying to.
And I still remember, how rough YouTube was when it first started. Like videos.
It was launched in 2005.
Okay, so all right, so that's what I guessed. I think the first time around.
So why? How did we know about it in 10th grade?
Well, was there stuff like on MySpace, or like was there other video stuff that was kind of starting to get started around the same time?
Could be.
And the thing is, like 2005, I mean, that was just like 10 years after the internet kind of took off. And I remember thinking that this platform was interesting. And I mean, in some ways, there was almost like hardly anything on it at the time. But with YouTube being new, and the internet was at that point a very strong repository. You could find articles and things. So like, it was a matter of convenience. I'd just go on and be like, how do I know Christianity's true? Or, how does Christianity compare to other religions? And really the first thing that really grabbed my attention was, how do Christian people that claim to be Christians distinguish themselves from, and I mean really, I don't even want to use the word just because it's a pejorative, but like, how do they distinguish them from Christian cults? So like, that was my first introduction to comparative religion, was a Christian, and it was Walter Martin's book. It was Kingdom of the Cults, where I realized that there were ways to talk about your faith as a Christian in a comparative manner to other people who claim to be Christians that will deny key tenets in the Bible or reinterpret them, and then ultimately even like comparing Christianity to other religions like Hinduism or Islam. And at the time, so like, I got his book, the paper copy of the book. I read through it. I didn't treat it like a novel. Like, I would go to sections and read like certain sections based on the topic. And I mean, it was almost exhaustive. I mean, things like a phone book. And like, there's chapters that are dedicated to Mormonism, to Jehovah's Witnesses, to Hinduism, to Islam. And it's like, you just have section after section comparing it to Christianity and its claims and how a Christian should think about these beliefs. And it rung my bell. In fact, it got, because YouTube was in its infancy, so I was like 10 years into my Christianity, so I was like 28. This was right when I was like, my life was changing, because I was newly divorced, and at the time, like, I was just getting into my relationship with Lisa, and
you got divorced like recently after getting right, or after converting?
No, I was married for 8 years as a new believer with my first marriage. But I was going somewhere with that. So once I was starting to get into that was like 2005, 2006, 2007. So what do I do? Because I'm not a reader. I don't read the books. Like, we're doing full circle here. Like, I'm going online and I find this thing, YouTube, and it's like, all right, so who's the author of this book? Oh, Walter Martin. Let me go online and see if I can find something with Walter Martin. Walter Martin. Sure enough, like, these grainy instructional videos show up on YouTube, Walter Martin. And man, I'd like listen to those over and over again. And be like, oh, this is really cool. Like, well, what else can I find? And then you start finding other apologetics material. And you find people like, like a good controversial topic in the church is young earth versus old earth. It's like, you find these young earth creationists, like, well, what are they saying? I mean, up until now, I just think these people are crazy. So like, let's see what they have to say. Oh, okay, they're not as crazy. They're not as crazy as everybody that ever mentioned them to me said they were. And so now you just start to second guess everybody's assumptions about the people that disagree with them. And now you're just curious and you're just digging. And that never went away. And I will share this. This was a big turning point for me personally. Was one of my siblings, who is not a Christian, was perplexed that I was such a committed Christian. She thought it was ridiculous, and that I actually believed the Bible, that I actually believed the things that were going on in the Bible. And it was the first time I'd seen her in a long time, and she convinced me to join. This is before Facebook. She convinced me to join an internet forum, and it was a very hostile to Christians, biblical Christians internet forum. It was a bunch of atheists that just wanted to tear you apart. Basically, the moment you raised your flag as a Christian, you had like 15 people pile on top of you to ridicule you. And have you ever done like an internet forum?
Years ago, probably like once or twice. Yeah.
Well, so by the time, and Lisa will recount this, like, God bless her for being patient with me, because there was a couple years there where I was just in debate mode. Like I couldn't wait to give my next response to people and to formulate an idea or to look into it, and like it was just a learning experience for me, and I was probably pretty obnoxious. I suspect that if you went and you tried to dig through some of the archives and some of these forums, you could find my old conversations, which would be, I mean, I've done it over the years, but I haven't seen them in a long time. I don't know if I could find them. I actually, like, I got onto a couple different forums, and that she was on. Like, she invited me on to get myself straightened out, you know, to get rid of my superstitious beliefs.
Yeah.
And you know, like we kind of got to know each other through that process as well, which was, you know, that was kind of a mixed bag. But ultimately, like, I just found myself hooked on debate topics in general. And you know, I'm different now than I was. Like, I'm still talkative, and I'll work through subjects, but for a while I was probably pretty obnoxious, more obnoxious than I am now, where I would jump on people. Like, if they said something that I knew was off, like, I would find a way. I wasn't like a jerk about it, but I was enough of a jerk that I would be very open to challenge someone. And I bet you a lot of people go through that season in their lives where they're just trying to feel out their own beliefs, and so they'll challenge people. I'm definitely more reluctant to do that now, just because I don't, you know, it's not like a high value thing to ruin a potential relationship just because you want to
be right.
Yeah, you want to be right, right? You want to correct them. And, you know, looking back now, I mean, there was a lot of things that I thought were correct that were like, you know, they needed, at a minimum, they needed refinement, and still do today. So as I worked through that, and did you ever hear the sunk cost fallacy? So, and I'm bringing this up on purpose. So, you know, sunk cost fallacy, and maybe you've done this with a book. So, like, have you ever read a book that you almost feel like you just wasted your time reading it?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, everybody does that, right?
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
Yeah.
And you're so invested in it.
Yeah, you're so invested in it that you have to finish.
Yeah.
But the sunk cost fallacy informs us that if it really is a waste of your time, you're further ahead just regaining whatever time you have and just, you know, get rid of it. So, like,
cut your losses.
Yeah, cut your losses. And, you know, that's something that I feel good about having learned over the years, is that I don't have to be a victim of the sunk cost fallacy. So, like, if I'm going down a path and I'm invested in whatever, debating people on an internet forum, and I do it for a couple of years, if something shifts where it's like, okay, I got what I needed to out of this. I don't have to sit there and say, like, oh, this identifies me. Like, this is the thing I have to keep doing because I've invested years of my life.
Right.
It's more like, okay, well, that was a good season of my life.
Yeah.
Like, all right, I'm gonna switch gears now. It's kind of like Forrest Gump when he's out there running in the desert and he just stops.
Yeah.
And he's like, and he's like, I'm gonna go home now.
Yeah, that's a good scene too. Yeah.
It is. So, I mean, I've never done that perfectly, but that's kind of where I landed. And, you know, I think it's just maturing, right? You just kind of start to grow out of certain modes of approaching people and thinking through things.
And that was one of those things that I wanted to ask the guys last night, right? Everybody's talking about how, you know, God took me out of this, God took me out of that, I used to be this. And it's all good because I have my story too, where I think, okay, God delivered me from that. But let's ask ourselves as men who are above our 20s, did we just grow tired of doing those things? If maybe we weren't even Christians, maybe we would have stopped anyway.
I honestly think there's truth to that.
Like, I'm just tired. I'm just older. I'm more mature.
Yeah.
I got other priorities.
I mean, and this is something that I think you're hitting on a really good thought, because, you know, I do think that everybody does this. Like, we have a tendency to be guilty of caricaturing our own faith. So, like, you're right. Like, people, at least outwardly, can gain maturity, responsibility, like, and this goes back to what it says in Scripture. Like, even even people that are evil know how to give good gifts.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's like, well, what does that mean? Are you saying everyone's evil? It's like, well, this is just like the nature of the world. Like, we're all evil.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, like the benefit is like some of us are redeemed. But like, what does evil look like? How does it manifest itself? Like, people can become responsible and not lie, cheat, and steal to any detrimental amount and still not be connected to God. Can still not be not saved because they're doing things to their own ends, to under their own power, for their own desires. And it's like, well,
you replace one idol with another.
Yeah. And I mean, and I guess it's kind of weird because it's like, well, and you hear this accusation all the time. It's like, well, these hypocrites at church, they don't look any different than the world. And it's like, well, there's some truth to that. And I'm not really entirely sure how to deal with it, because it's like, well, what does it look like to be in? Bless you. What does it look like to be in the world and not of the world?
Right. All right. So not be in the world, but not be of the world. There will be behaviors that demonstrate that you're not of the world.
I agree.
Right. There are changes that you make because you're set apart.
Yeah.
And you're the light.
Right. How does that manifest itself? Like, say. Cut off the extremes, and I'm playing. I don't like the phrase, but yeah, I'm playing devil's advocate. Cut off the extremes, like when you are dealing with comparisons, you're always thinking about like the real pious hypocrites at church, or the drug addicts that just hate God. But like, there's this whole mass of people in the middle that. There are people that will reject God their entire lives, but they won't be alcoholics. They won't be without jobs. They may be like very successful lawyers or doctors that live their entire life in that mode, raising responsible kids that go to college. And that's the life that they live till the day they die. And on the other side, you're going to have run-of-the-mill Christians that struggle with certain things, but they still make do. Like, they'll figure out their lives, and they'll support their families and stuff. So it's like, well, we lost our compass. I mean, like, these people don't really look any different. And I know I'm being kind of facetious, because usually on the surface it's hard to distinguish, but having a conversation like this, where you're talking about where your faith lies and really what the purpose of your life is, to glorify God and to just, you know, whatever God's asking, like, just try to figure that out as imperfectly as you can. It's like, not as imperfectly, but imperfectly in spite of your effort. It's like, that comes through a lot of times. Like, and really it just comes down to asking people what they believe. Like, if their belief system and their worldview is bizarrely disconnected from glorifying God. And I'm saying people that claim to be Christians. Like, they'll claim to be a Christian because they go to church on Sunday, but it doesn't take much of an interview with them to start to at least get an inclination that, oh yeah, it's like, hey, this is definitely a brother or sister in Christ. Like, oh yeah, they gave their heart to Christ. They're not perfect. Like, once I hang out with them long enough, I realize how human they are. But at the end of the day, they know that they're committed to Christ. But on the other hand, you have people that start to say things. It's like, man, like, they take the very first detour they can to not think about what Jesus did in the Bible. They will take the first off ramp they can to say, my Christianity equals my Christianity plus my job, or my Christianity plus politics. Politics is really the most important, but my Christianity is a vehicle for my politics. So now it's kind of like, like, your antennas should go up and be like, I'm not having a mutual discussion with someone that believes the same thing I do. And I think we just have to be sensitive to that. It doesn't mean you treat them any different. It's just that, you know, you make it part of your mental furniture. You take note. It's kind of like, okay, I'm gonna have a different type of conversation with this person, even just out of being cordial. You'll have a different type of conversation because it's not like you're gonna be able to put things out there in a way where you would connect with someone who's truly committed to the word and saying, "Hey, I'm gonna." Like we're going to be able to connect on this because we are fellow believers. Now, where things get weird, if I haven't said too much already, and this is where I get stuck a lot, and this happens a lot in the church, is when you find out that these people that are ministers that you really revered as great expository preachers, good apologetics preachers. Did we ever define an apologist?
Defending.
Yeah, defending
I think
the
you
faith.
did say it.
We did. You find these people that you really revere, and then you find out that they were living not just like a little bit of struggle,
duplicitous life,
but like really bad.
Yeah.
Like total duplicitous life. And it's like, wow, they were able to understand the word to such a degree that they were able to be a blessing in everything they knew. But man, they lived a totally deceptive life. Like totally upside down. And that puts me back on my heels when I think about it. And that happens. I have some stories to share on that front, but I'll save that for another day. Some interesting trials we went through. But yeah. What do you think? Got any final thoughts?
Raises more thoughts, but then we'll be here forever.
Yeah, I'd say let's. We got some good content. I think we can splice it together.
I think after watching it, we'll have some questions. We could write them down.
Yeah.
Note them. Hey, we didn't finish that thought.
Yeah.
Or I'm pretty sure that's a good topic for the next one. Let's get some thoughts together, gather our thoughts for this one.
Absolutely.
And then on the next one, we'll pick up.
All right, sounds good.
It is recorded,
George, my friend, it's a pleasure to start this journey.
Yeah, same here, man. Thank you.